Hey, everybody, this is Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. It is Monday. Welcome to the Hammerhead Show. Like I said, I'm Jack Hammer. With me, as always, on Mondays, my good buddy, Rob Shue. Rob, it seems like I just saw you yesterday, 2 days ago.
Yes, indeed, you did. It was great meeting you for the first time in person, Jack. You know, it felt like we were already close friends. I mean, we've been doing this show for some time, known each other for some time, but it was great to break bread, have a wonderful meal, and an unfortunate game.
Yeah, the dinner was really good. The game, not so much. I know we had talked before. I said I thought it was going to be a tight one, regardless of what the weather conditions were, and unfortunately, it ended up playing out that way. Um, tough way to start the season for the 49ers. Losing to the Bears 19-10.
Very tough. I mean, especially for the Niner faithful who, let's be honest, came into this one overconfident. I mean, the expectation was the 49ers would absolutely walk the Bears. Bears were listed as maybe the 32nd least talented roster in the NFL. 49ers being a top 5 roster. Regardless of rain, it felt like the 49ers were set up with a great defense, solid run game, should have been able to come in and control the game, much like they did for a good portion of it. But you called it correctly in that the weather tightened it up. Even if it hadn't been for the weather, it felt as if this one could have been tight, but definitely ended up being a tight one that went the wrong direction with a couple of critical plays.
Yeah, just a couple of mistakes here and there. There's been, the title of the show is Who to Blame, and we're going to get into that. I think there's lots of blame that goes around. I think there's lots of different ways that you can put that out. Real quick before we get started, though, I do want to just shout out Raphael 569ers from the Toolbox. He says, "What's up, Jack, Rob, members of the Toolbox, everyone? He wants to know if we met up and what we did and what food we tried." Raphael, like you already heard, we did meet up. We tried a kind of a fancy joint that Rob picked out together. I was all over the place on Saturday. I showed up, and I was at one point in Wrigleyville for the 49er invasion party that was taking place at Sluggers down there. Huge contingent of people from the Bay Area, with the Giants game having just let out right before that. And then there's some video of what was going on there on the channel here. And then just kind of hung out. I was all over the place until we finally got together for dinner that night. And then the second night after the game, spent a lot of time at the stadium because it just takes a while to get all the writing done. And then I handed out to Giordano's. One of my Twitter followers kept telling me that I needed to try out Giordano's, and just was right there. And so my girlfriend and I, had come into town that night, and so we got to go hit up that spot. And Rob, I think, went to Giordano's from another spot in town.
I did. I went and got takeout. I thought I was going to get to eat at the restaurant. It was a late dinner. I was hanging out at the hotel room, watching the game, hanging. And then I went out, and it turned out they had closed the dining room. I was like, oh, shit, I'm going to be out of some pizza. Sorry for the language there, Jack. But, when you don't get the pizza you were looking for, that's a major crisis. And so I had to get one to go. Took it back like a hoarder into my hotel room, and just had the shame, just the pizza in front of me, wolfing it down. I was so hungry by that point. I was so sad. I was eating my emotions. It was very rough, Jack, but I felt remarkably better after eating that pizza. It was delicious.
Yeah, which one did you get, by the way, real quick?
I went for, I think, the Chicago style original that they have there. Pepperoni, mushrooms, bell peppers, and onions. A winning combination if I've ever heard of one.
Yeah, I went for the all meat one, and as I was about halfway through, I was saying I wish I would have got the Chicago style one. That would have been maybe a little bit more of an authentic, but it was still good all the way around anyway. And it was like I said earlier, it was great to finally get together and have a good time. Team let us down, though. The 49ers let us down and let a lot of people down, because there was a lot of 49er fans in the rain. I had some 49er fans with me on the plane on the way home. They got to watch me do the all-22 breakdown on the plane while I was flying home and looking at that. And so, just real quick, let's just get into it. Before we get into the game, just one update really quick. Elijah Mitchell with an MCL sprain. According to Kyle Shanahan, he confirmed the reports that we've seen earlier today that Elijah Mitchell is going to be out for at least 8 weeks with that sprain. And he said that they were able to narrow it down, and it occurred there was an 11-yard run that Mitchell had right before the touchdown from Deebo Samuel. And that's the play in which he hurt his knee. So 49ers are going to be without their top running back for a while here. 2 years in a row, they've lost their starting running back in week 1.
That one hurts. I think I count it as somewhat fortunate. And I know that that's hard to stomach after hearing that your starting running back is going to be out for the first half of the season. But I do think that we have to be grateful it wasn't a season-ending injury, and we will get Elijah Mitchell back. It's also a point in time to call out that the 49ers kept the more talented running back on the roster in Jordan Mason. That seems like a really important decision at this point. If you had banked on, well, we'll keep Trey Sermon because we have a deep running back room, probably not going to need a contribution from him, then you would have had two players where the contributions are questionable. Ty Davis-Price already not being active in week one, going to need him to step up in the absence. And we're going to get to see what Jordan Mason has in the regular season. Can he continue what he showed being a dominant runner throughout preseason and carry some of the load? Because I don't want to see a sharp increase in Debo's carries. When you map out how many carries he had on Sunday over the course of a freaking season, it is ridiculous. 231 or something like that, 251. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's not, that's not going to continue. I know some of it was him scrambling and some of these, also there was a couple of quarterback sneaks and there was a couple of runs too, but I don't think you're going to see that kind of performance or run performance from Trey Lance moving forward. I think that was just, they're going to use them in short yardage situations. They did that last year. They're going to continue to do that at times. Looking at the game itself, what did you think? I'm not sure where you want to start on this because there's so many different areas in which the 49ers lost this game. What do you think? Where do you think we should start off on this as far as the reasons for the loss or what have you?
I mean, there are so many, and that would be my overall takeaway is that I cannot squarely assign blame to one person, one particular aspect of the 49ers team. To me, the blame has to go all the way around. When I went through on my channel just moments ago, did a play-by-play run through and listed off the miscues and the mistakes, it was many, many different names that got called out. So many players, each contributed in small ways, and it felt like that all added up. So, I mean, to me, I think that we could start with what everyone wants to talk about, and that is Trey Lance, because you have pretty specific camps of people that are either saying, hey, you cannot blame Trey Lance for this one, or those that are saying, hey, I told you so. Like, I never had faith in this young man to begin with. And this is just further evidence that the Niners win when Jimmy's playing, but not with any other quarterback. And both of those feel like they lack context to me.
I agree. I think when it comes to Trey Lance, you gotta look at that game in a couple of different ways. He had a pretty solid start, I thought, for the most part. He was 6 of 10, 70 yards in the first half. But at the same time, he had a really big miss. And it took points off the board. They should, he had Tyler Kroft open for a touchdown, overthrew him. And instead of being up at that point, they would have been up 10-0, depending on what had happened with the first drive, because that's the second play of the second possession. Instead of being up 10-0 at that point, you're now down. You're still tied at 0 because 2 plays later, Mike McGlinchey gets beat for a sack, pushes him out of field goal range, and they end up having to punt. I thought that Lance played okay. I feel like I felt better about his performance watching it live than I did when I watched the All-22.
Admittedly, I watched it live from the stands and then rewatched the original broadcast in the condensed version. I've not seen the All-22 to get a true sense of it. And so I am going to listen with bated breath in your impressions of what that All-22 showed, because there's no doubt that it does show a different reality than what you see in some of the limited angles you get on TV. Being able to take these various angles and put them together, you get a firmer understanding of who was open, what was missed, and what was truly happening. Not to mention the proximity of defenders and things like that. Because I'll be honest, when that big play was missed, and I agree with you, it was a big play opportunity. It was missed. It was Lance who missed it. What I saw was Lance fakes that handoff, rolls right, stops, plants his feet. But then I see Juice's defender get right into his face because Juice just kind of rubs him. Doesn't give him an actual block while he's running on his pattern out of the backfield. And so I thought he had to rush the throw. And that's the one where he misses Tyler Kroft by a yard or two. So two things on it. Thought he had to rush the throw because the defender was in his face. I also believe that's a completion to Kittle. I believe if Kittle is out there, he makes that catch with his speed. And if Juice blocks his man a little bit harder while he's running the route in the flat, maybe gets it off because 99 is in his face. And again, it looks like he shortens the motion, and you can expect inaccuracy with that.
Yeah, I don't think that it was Kyle Juszczyk's fault on that one, because the way that play is designed, he's just supposed to kind of he's just rubbing
He's
him.
leaking out. Yeah.
Yeah. And even with that, there's enough time for him to make that throw to Kroft. And you might be right. If it is George Kittle out there that's doing that, or maybe even Kyle Juszczyk, that might be a completion instead of Tyler Kroft. But they've run that play a number of times in practice. That's the funny part about that play, or the part that I found interesting. That was a play that Trey Lance ran a lot at North Dakota State. The play action boot where they run the leak. If you got a chance, it's not a very good video that I put out because it was back when I had really poor quality on my streams. But I put together a video that was like why Trey Lance and the 49ers, or why Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers fell in love with Trey Lance. Go back and watch that, because everything that I talked about in that video, we saw in the game yesterday. We saw the first big completion from Deebo Samuel to Brandon Ayuk. Play action, over route coming from right to left, drills it into him, hits him on stride, great throw. The screen game that they're running, the leak play that we talked about there, just a bunch of stuff, and it's all in that video. And the offense that they run with Trey Lance isn't any different than what they've done before. It's all the same stuff as what Jimmy Garoppolo ran for them, other than in the running game they run a little bit more. They ran the triple option yesterday, and that's not something that they had. Obviously, they didn't do that with Jimmy.
I was excited to see the triple option. That was cool.
Yeah, no, it was good, and they just, I thought Lance played okay. It just the miss to Kroft was a bad one because it took points off the board, and there was a throw on the opening possession of the second half when they're down in the red zone. They're in the deep red zone on the 4 or 5 yard line, wherever it is right there. It's third down, and he drops back to pass, and he has his pick on the left side. He's looking left. He has Juwan Jennings open, and he has Ross Dwelly open. And for whatever reason, he doesn't throw the ball, and he ends up getting sacked. Yeah. And that's on him as well. So it's just so many missed points that came off the board on his part with just not getting the ball out of his hands. Trey Lance yesterday was the same Trey Lance that we saw last year in a lot of ways. And he was the same Trey Lance that we've been talking about throughout training camp. He's a guy who makes some really nice throws and that make you go, wow, that's it right there. And then he makes the misses, and he has the misses that follow up with it. And it's just not, the consistency isn't there. Weather conditions yesterday were poor. So let's see what happens when they get to Levi's next Sunday, because I'm pretty sure it's not going to be rainy like it was yesterday.
I should hope not. That would be freakish if it happened again in Santa Clara as it did in that monsoon game, whatever, that typhoid or whatever they called it there the last time. Yeah, I just want to call out that I said much the same thing at the conclusion of my broadcast, wherein I'm saying the needle on Trey hasn't moved because of that performance. Like, what we thought coming into it is what we saw in that one, that there would be some accuracy issues. They showed themselves on the field, that there would be some amazing freaking throws and some amazing plays and moving the ball with his legs. He absolutely was able to do those things as well. So it was an up and down performance. And when I hear you talk about Trey, I hear you acknowledge that. I hear you say up and down performance, did some good things, struggled at times. What I find funny is most often all people hear from that is Trey struggled. And then they want to say that you're being overly critical about that. I think that in this one, it is fair to call out that, do I put this loss on Trey Lance? No, I do not. Did he play a great game? No, he did not. There were things he could have done that would have swayed this game in the 49ers' favor. There are a couple of things I wanted to ask you, Jack. One is just a question for me around Trey Lance's running that I'll get to you in just a moment. But the first was something you were looking out for in this one. You had mentioned it in our show on Friday, talking about Trey Lance's command, his ability to operate the offense, There were a ton of penalties out there. Do you see that as the burden falling on Trey Lance for some of that? Was it sloppy play across the board? How did you rate Trey's command of the offense, at least through the first, say, 2.5 quarters?
I thought that it was pretty good. I thought that Lance's command was for the most part pretty good. You know,
I thought so too.
Yeah, what I think what I was getting at when we were talking about it was there just something about when Trey Lance is playing that the offense just kind of doesn't have a rhythm at times, right? I felt like the rhythm was there a little bit more yesterday, but you saw them drive the ball down the field, or you saw them be in position to score and then just not be able to do it 3 times. And that's the kind of stuff where at the end of the day, when you get to it, let's be honest. The 49ers defense beat the heck out of the Chicago Bears in the first half.
There was unbelievable.
That game should have been done and buried after the 49ers' first possession of the second half. It should have been at least 20-0, and they should have been walking away with it. Instead, it's 10-0, which looks good because you're up by 2 scores, but it just takes one fluke play. And like I said on my stream last night after the game, I tweeted it out as well. When you let bad teams hang around, you're going to lose, because all it takes is for them to make one play, and all of a sudden they're right there, and all of a sudden now they have momentum. That game yesterday, if you go back and you remember the second week of last season in Philadelphia, where the Eagles were kicking the 49ers' tails all over the field until Jimmy Garoppolo and the offense had one big play on a throw to Deebo Samuel, and then the couple plays after that they score and they go in at halftime with the lead after getting their butts kicked for the whole first half, and they go on and win. That was yesterday's game, but in reverse.
Yeah. So the follow-up I have here is around Trey's running, because I'll be honest, I, for the most part, liked what I saw there. Felt very Josh Allen-esque, powerful running, and not like what I saw last year where it felt as if Trey was being hit and stopped. This was Trey hitting defenders, sometimes multiple defenders, and carrying them forward for a yard or two. Obviously, the number of carries was high, probably dictated by the type of game that we saw, the weather that was out there in Chicago. But do you anticipate that we will continue to see Trey Lance running in this style? And is it a concern, or is it no longer a concern because they kept Jimmy Garoppolo?
I hope that I hope we don't see it quite so much. I think, I don't think that they really overran him. I think they only ran him a couple times, and when he was
designed runs, right?
Yeah, on the designed runs, I think they only ran him a couple of times. And those weren't really, I don't think he really got hit hard on any of those. He just kind of ran into the back of the pile and pushed it or what have you. I didn't feel, the one thing that I will say, like, I wasn't overly impressed. Like, I wasn't wowed by, I was like, there were some really nice throws and I said, wow, that's a good throw. But I wasn't like, that's a throw that I haven't seen anybody make before or anything like that. Like, or that's not even a throw that I haven't seen somebody in the 49ers uniform in the last 5 years hit, like the over routes and things like that. But the difference that Trey Lance brings to this offense is 3rd and 13, quarterback draw, and you pick up 14 yards. That's right. That's something that's different. And it's funny because I was looking at the all-22 and that the play that preceded that was one of his best throws of the day. Nobody's going to talk about. It didn't count on the stat sheet. It wasn't some big wow down the field throw. It was a deep out to Brandon Ayuk. They got called back for a pass interference on Ayuk because he kind of pushed off with his right hand as he got into his break. There were so many balls early in that first half from Trey Lance where he's throwing the ball on time. And you can see him hit his back foot, and he's ripping the ball in there, and that was impressive. But that throw to Ayuk, that was one of them, and it just happened to be maybe it's because the angle from where I was sitting in the press box, where I was kind of like able to see it, but I could see Ayuk, barely starting to break when the ball's coming out of Lance's hands, and it was a really pretty throw, and unfortunately it doesn't show up on the stat sheet. But
yeah, that was really pretty. The throw to Ray McLeod was a dime. I thought that there were a couple to Jawan Jennings that were great as well. There were flashes for me, absolute flashes. And I agree that I don't think we'll see Lance's stat sheet adding up in the way that it did as far as the number of carries that he had.
Yeah. So to answer your question, I'm sorry, I'm all over the board. I don't stay on task very much. I'm all bouncing all over the place with my thoughts on the game. But yeah, it was the runs. I don't think you're going to see him carry the ball 13 times a game, but
By the way, though, back to your Ayuk one, because I have the same thing in my notes. Lance to Ayuk, freaking beautiful pass, but then PI on Ayuk. I thought that was weak. Was that not one of the softer push-offs that gets called as offensive PI? It felt like he put his hand on the defender, but didn't apply any pressure.
Yeah, it didn't. That's what I wrote down in my notes when I was watching the film. I was like, that's a weak call right there.
Real weak.
I just didn't. Let's get into it since you brought up the penalties. Let's get into that one because that leads to the
just to point out a couple of super chats in there, a couple from William Bennett, just a little bit up to get into.
No, I saw them up there. Let's get to the first one real quick, and then we'll get into the penalties. He says, O-line only gave Trey 1.5 seconds in the pocket. I'm going to disagree with you, Will. I think having watched the all 22 video, I'm going to agree a little bit with what Kyle Shanahan said in his press conference today on his media call, where he said that he felt like the interior of the offensive line played well for the most part. I agree with that assessment. I think some of it, when I went back and watched the all 22, and you'll see this when I do my film breakdown, there were times when Trey Lance moved himself into pressure more than, there was people around him. Don't get me wrong. There was bodies around him, but he moved himself into sacks and pressures and things like that at times. I put it out on Twitter. I said my two takeaways from it were his feel and his eyes. The feel, there's not much of a feel from the pocket for Lance. He's very quick to move around. He doesn't just slide naturally. And the reason I say the eyes go with it is because when he is moving in the pocket, his eyes are dropping instead of just feeling where he needs to move. His eyes are dropping. He's jumping around. What's happening with those movements is it makes it hard. Like there's one where he's got, I think it's the throw. It's going to go to Jennings, and it's a throw behind Jennings in the first quarter, and he really jumps up into the pocket, and because of that, he's kind of. You can visually see his head being down and then come up. You can actually see it from the end zone view of the all 22. And then the ball comes out late as a result of it, because instead of just having enough feel for it to just slide to his left a little bit, because the pressure of what happened is Aaron Banks is riding the defensive tackle through the pocket, which is what he's taught to do. He's driving him around the quarterback. And instead of Lance just sliding, like taking a half step to his left to get some space, he jumps up into the pocket. Well, now he's got guys all around him. His head's not up, and the ball's coming out late instead of just keeping his head downfield, sliding and throwing. And that's one of the pieces, and you'll hear me talk about it on my film review.
If you had to place blame, not blame, if you had to say those that struggled the most along the offensive line, my impression was that it would have been Banks and McGlinchey who had the roughest games out of the five. Certainly, you could point to a couple of other plays. Trent Williams picked himself up a penalty and was having trouble with a young defender who said he had a tell on Trent Williams. But in my impression, it would have been Banks and McGlinchey that I would have graded worse in pass protection.
I think that Jake Brendel had a rough day. Mike McGlinchey got beat on the one, but as the game went on, I felt like he got better.
That one was so notable. That's probably why it stood out.
Yeah, he just oversets a little bit. The guy gets up inside of him, and it's just a really bad play on his part. Ball needs to, and the other part about that was there's nowhere to throw the ball to. I don't think I saw anybody that was really open on that. Lance starts to his right, has to work his way back to the left. There's just nobody there. It's one of those that's supposed to be real quick. Doesn't mean that McGlinchey didn't mess up, because he did, but ball's supposed to be out a little bit quick. It's not Trey Lance's fault. It's just McGlinchey gets beat quick. There's nowhere for Lance to throw the ball. You get a sack. It's just a bad play for the 49ers. And then William also mentions the offense misses Kittle, not catching but blocking. I don't know how much I would agree with that. The 49ers offense ran for 4.8 yards per carry yesterday.
That's a fair point. That's a nice clip.
Yeah, they 49ers. Think about this: 49ers averaged 4.8 yards per carry to 2.7. 49ers, the 49ers dominated this game. It should not have been. They should not have lost this game.
It really was only in rewatching it again. Haven't seen the all 22 yet, but in rewatching the televised version, did see one miss by Warner in there, but no guarantee that it would have been Warner in on that play, even if Kittle had been playing. Certainly, Warner finds himself in there as the blocking tight end. I would tend to think Kittle is the better blocker, therefore it would be felt, but I didn't see a disparity in him not being out there for the blocking.
Yeah, I don't think so. No, I agree with you on if you wanted to say like Aaron Banks, there's a couple of runs where Aaron Banks didn't really do a very good job of getting to the second level or moving the guy that was on him. I saw that with Mike McGlinchey. I saw that with Spencer Burford at times. There was one with Trent Williams as well. I think they all kind of took turns missing blocks on run plays here and there, but they ran the ball real well. You mentioned that one of the Bears defenders said they had a tell. That's not surprising when you look at what Matt Eberflus has done to Kyle Shanahan now in 3 matchups since Shanahan came to San Francisco. Eberflus is the defensive coordinator in Dallas in 2017, held the 49ers to 10 points. Last year with the Colts, held them to 18, and then yesterday to 10. And in all those games, the 49ers offense moved the ball well early on. Well, at least the Indianapolis Colts game last year and this one, they moved the ball well the first half. The second half, they were shut down. There's something to what Eberflus has seen out there that is helping them know what's coming.
Yeah. And I'm not going to be shocked if this Chicago defense ends up being one of the better defenses in the league by the end of the year with the way in which they played.
Yeah, they're going to be good. They have a very good defensive coach and Eberflus, like I just said. And yeah, on top of that, it's just the penalty. Before we get to the penalties, let's get into the penalties. I guess the penalties were a big part of it yesterday,
Huge.
Right? You had the offensive pass interference on Ayuk. I know that Lance picked it up on the next play, the first down at least, but there was still a loss of about 9 yards net on that from where the first down was to where when Ayuk got it to where it was after Lance picked it up. And then you had the defensive penalties. I think the defensive ones were the killers, were killer penalties. And those, man, there were 2 of them. 2 of those were, 3 of them really were really tough. The 2 personal fouls on the hits to Justin Fields. I kind of ask, what is the defender supposed to do in that situation? Because
right.
you have a quarterback that is running the ball. He's not even really scrambling. On one of the plays, I know for sure he's not even scrambling. He's running the ball. He faked a run and then he takes off running. And what are you supposed to? Because what's going to happen eventually here is somebody's going to let up and not hit Justin Fields, and Justin Fields is going to do what the kid from Pitt did last year in the college game, if you remember, where he's scrambling and he looks like he's going to slide. The defender lets up, and then he just keeps running and takes off for a touchdown.
Yeah,
it's going to happen at some point here, and you're putting them in the defense is in a really tough spot because if you either play it out and get called for a penalty when there's really nothing you can do because the laws of physics don't allow you to stop in time or to miss them. Or the offensive player is going to juke you out and make a touchdown, and you're going to get looked at, bad because you did the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, there were some brutal ones. I thought that the first one on Dre Greenlaw as Fields was going out of bounds, I legitimately thought from the film and seeing it live, that was sort of right across the field from where I was sitting. It appeared that Dre was attempting to jump sort of out of the way initially and ended up landing on Fields out of bounds. Yep. That felt like a bang play that was unintentional, got called. Not shocking that it did. And the Azeez Al-Shire one where it was a hit to the head of Fields. Again, another unnecessary roughness. Fields is just so fast at going from fully prone, running downfield to like all of a sudden he's in a slide. Like it was so fast. I couldn't believe it. When he got down on his knee on a different run, like again, it was just boom, he's down. He's like, grease lightning. I don't know how you're supposed to react to that. And I absolutely agree with you that as soon as defenders stop hitting him, he is going to stay up and keep going because he's clearly that gifted of an athlete that he can pop down to a knee or stay up.
Yeah, it was really tough on him. There's not a whole lot you can do there. And then, the other mistake that the defense made was I think it was right after the Greenlaw face mask call. That kept the drive alive. And you had a throw out to the right side on the right sideline, and Taishan Gibson has that ball dead to right, and the ball falls through his hands.
Yep.
Doesn't come out the pick, and that leads to I think a couple plays later is either the touchdown to Pettis or it leads to the drive where they score. I know they score another touchdown as a result of it later on in that possession. Missed opportunities on offense, missed opportunities on defense. Rough.
the fact that those are back to back, right? You got the personal foul on Dre Greenlaw for the face mask, killer. And then Taishan Gibson dropping the pick, killer. 2 plays later, it is the shot to Dante Pettis, right? So, I mean, it was just absolutely a back. Even that throw, even the throw to Pettis, you had both of our DNs converging on him. Armstead and Charles Omenihu are coming together to just crush Fields. Armstead dives low at Fields' legs. Omenihu has to jump over him and then is slowed down and can't catch up to Fields as well. It looked like either one of them could have gotten that sack, but didn't. My question to you about the Taishan Gibson missed pick is, do we see Taishan Gibson back out there next week? Or do the 49ers go out and maybe sign Jaquiski Tartt or bring in someone else to fill in at that opposite position? What did you see from Gibson the rest of the game? Is he still going to be out there next week?
I think he'll be out there. I don't think there was, I don't know if it was his fault or not, some of the stuff after that. I think he'll still be on the team. I think that's partly why he played yesterday. I mean, this is a guy who they brought off the street to start over 2 guys that were with him all throughout training camp.
Right.
So I don't think he's going anywhere. I think it's kind of a situation like last year when they had all those injuries at the cornerback spot and they brought all those veterans in. I think it's going to be Gibson until Ward comes back, going through it. And Kevin, real quick, he said he comes in with a super chat. Kevin's also a member of the Toolbox. I'm going to take in a little bit different direction just because it's here. It was up there for a while. He says, think Shanny has to take some responsibility too, not just Lance or the O. The Niners sandwich that missed to allow Pettis free was crazy too. Yeah, and that's the thing, Kevin, is I know this was early on before we got into everything. So hopefully we've kind of answered your question as we've gone through, because it's not just Lance. It's not just the offense. The offense played a big role in it, but the defense played a role in it too, because they did struggle in the second half. There's no doubt about it. The game should have been put out of reach, but it wasn't. So you need to keep playing, and they struggled. Go ahead.
Quick question for you. 10-7. Niners get the ball back. 4th and 1 near midfield. It felt reasonable not to go for it, right? You're still up. You're 10-7. Defense, other than the schoolyard play we just talked about with that sandwich that should have converged on Fields and wiped out the Dante Pettis catch like Kevin's talking about. But no, we get to 4th and 1 after an 8-yard run on 3rd and 9 by Lance, and we punt on 4th and run. Up until that point, on 3rd and a long one, really felt like 3rd and 2. On 3rd and 2, we get 3. Like, Lance is sneaking for 2-3 yards at a clip. I have to admit that I was a little bit surprised near midfield that we didn't go for it on that 4th down. Keep the drive going, get the momentum back, let the defense rest a little bit, because that felt like the second part of the turning point. The Dante Pettis pass absolutely took the wind out of our sails, but failing to keep that next drive going by the 49ers seemed to really put the defense up against the wall.
Yeah, that would have been 4th and 1 at their own 41, which is, that's a tough one to go for in that situation. They choose to punt. It's one of those things where if you go for it and you miss it, I don't think there's if you go for it on 4th down, you make it, you're golden. But otherwise, right, you're the GOAT. Either way, you're the problem. If you go for it,
almost
you don't
a lose.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Obviously, if you go for it there, I didn't have because they're on their own side of the 50. They're at the 41. I felt like they punted. They pinned them back. They put them on their own 16-yard line.
Right. No, it was a great punt. And honestly, I didn't write down where they were at. I had remembered it as being closer to the 46, 47, 42, 41. That's pretty far into your own territory. Not super conservative. Still a little surprised based on what we did elsewhere that we weren't aggressive there. But again, had they gone for it and not gotten it, we'd be criticizing him for that.
No, I'm cheating. I have my notes right here, so that's how I was able to look that up. But yeah, I don't know. It was that's a tough one. That's a tough one. But let's get into the we've talked, to Kevin's point. We talked about Trey Lance. We talked about the offense, their issues. We've kind of gone through the defensive issues. A lot of it had to do with penalties. During our conversation on Friday over on your channel, you had mentioned to me, you had asked me who I felt was going to put up the better numbers between the quarterbacks. you had asked me if it was going to be Trey Lance or if it was going to be Justin Fields. And I said I thought Justin Fields would put up the better numbers, but that Lance would do what it takes to win the game. I was wrong. Justin Fields' numbers were not good. He was pedestrian in the first half, but when Justin Fields turned the game around for the Chicago Bears offense late in the second quarter. There was a drive when they drove it down. I think it was in the second quarter when they drove it down and they were going to kick a field goal, but the punter had got the towel and wiped the field down, and so they ended up having to punt instead.
Yes.
That drive right there was what started to turn the game around for the Chicago Bears offense, because you saw Justin Fields start to use his legs. He had 5 carries for 26 yards on that possession. It was bootleg action and scrambles and all that kind of stuff. So you saw it start to turn there in the second half. He does a couple of things. The one where he breaks free, he hits Dante Pettis for the touchdown. There's one where it's a third down, like 3rd and 7. He has pressure. He breaks free to the right side. And because he's scrambling now, Travis Ward holds on to the receiver. He gets tackled short of the line of the game, but there's a holding call. But it's all because Justin Fields started moving around. And really, I felt like Justin Fields made the plays that Trey Lance didn't in order to win the game. But part of the reason that Justin Fields was in that situation and couldn't bring the team back was because Trey Lance and the offense didn't do their job in the first half.
Yeah. And I'm in complete alignment that Justin Fields is just a more elusive runner than Trey Lance. And certainly a field in the conditions that field was in gives a distinct advantage to the runner, because they get to decide what direction they're going to cut. And then the defender has to respond to that, oftentimes with less sure footing. Why it's always harder to be a defender. But I like that call out, that even though that drive, it matriculated down the field and got them 0 points because of the weird 15-yard penalty for wiping off the field with a towel. Who's ever heard of that freaking penalty? It was a 12-play drive. Even though it was no points, absolutely began to bend the 49ers defense. And there was a play in there in particular that felt like it could have gone the other way. It was 2nd and 8 later on in the drive. It was play action, and Samson Ebukam misses a huge sack opportunity. Fields breaks the other direction and tears off for a 14-yard run. And so just illuminating that, absolutely. Fields was making plays out there towards the end of the second and into the third quarter. But up until that point, I'm with you. He looked pedestrian or worse. The defense was swarming early, and it felt like this game was a lock for the Niners until it wasn't. Yeah,
it felt like they were dominating, but they didn't put it away. I kept talking about it, that the game should be this, and it wasn't, and you saw it come back and it bit him in the rear. The other thing that I kept saying was, I kept seeing people talking about this game coming down to mistakes or the play calling from Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan was too conservative. There were too much of this, too much of that. And I kind of had to ask, what are you watching? If you felt like Kyle Shanahan was too, like he didn't put his team in the best position to win, I kind of have to question what you're watching, because I'm pretty sure he called the play that Tyler Kroft got wide open on.
Right.
I'm pretty sure he called the plays that got the 49ers down to the 16 before the fumble by Deebo Samuel. I'm pretty sure he called all those things. And the only thing that I will say, if you want to blame Kyle Shanahan, what you need to blame him for is the fact that this has been a constant theme under him, where there's just seems to be some undisciplined play from when it comes to penalties, those types of things. It all comes back on the head coach eventually. It's your job to win games regardless of how you do it. And when the quarterback that you handpicked is missing throws, even though you dialed it up, at some point it is going to come back and bite you. But I don't blame him for the loss yesterday.
No, I think it's fair to criticize Kyle Shanahan for some of the things that occurred in the game, in particular towards the end of the game where there just didn't seem to be any sense of urgency. And it was clear that the weather was rolling in. It was clear that it was going to get worse as the game went on. There were 6 or 7 minutes left, and it felt as if the Niners were acting as though it was the start of the fourth quarter, down 2 scores. So I could get critical about that. There are a couple of play calls that maybe I'm going to nitpick about, but certainly I'm not laying the blame on Kyle Shanahan. I agree with you that there were many plays drawn up by Kyle that, had they been executed, would have turned the tide in this one. It is fair to point out the penalties. I think in every first week of Kyle Shanahan's tenure with the 49ers, I believe he has double-digit penalties in every opener in his tenure with the 49ers. So it's been a consistent trend, and that is something where you can point to the head coach, because discipline does come from the top. And maybe it's because we have a very complicated system and guys aren't able to just, play without thinking. And maybe it's just a lack of focus on it. That one feels fair. But again, this game to me, if anyone is saying it's this person's fault, singular, they're wrong about who they're saying is at fault here. This was a team freaking loss.
Yeah, and Aaron Veek says they went away from what was working, Jack. So this is getting at Kyle Shanahan and Aaron. I hope you've been a part of the channel for a long time. If you have, you know that I'm not afraid to argue with you a little bit. Doesn't mean that I don't like you. But here's what I'm going to say: the 49ers in the first half, Trey Lance threw the ball 10 times. They were running the ball 10, and they were dominating with the run. They didn't go away from it. They opened up the second half with a run from Deebo Samuel for 11 yards, a incomplete pass from Trey Lance, a run for 4 yards. Then you have the deep ball from Lance, and then you have run. You get into 3rd and goal because it's 3rd and 5 now, because you got stopped with a loss of 2 on 2nd and goal. You're left. You're going to run the ball from the 5-yard line on 3rd and goal. Maybe, but you call a pass play there. You have Juwan Jennings and Ross Dwelly both open on the left side where the quarterback's looking, and he doesn't throw the ball. I don't know where Kyle Shanahan went away from what was working.
Yeah.
What changed was Elijah Mitchell went down, and Jeff Wilson Jr. wasn't effective, and Trey Lance fell apart. I was talking to Rob about this before the show. Let me share some numbers with you. The first half, Trey Lance was 6 of 10 for 70 yards. Opened up the second half, he completed a couple of throws right off the bat, and they were up, 10-0. The one, he had the incomplete throw, and then he hit the deep ball to Juwan Jennings. So he's 7 of 11 through the first half and the beginning of the second half, the first possession. From that point on, before the rain came, Trey Lance went from 7 of 11 to 9 of 18. Is that on Kyle Shanahan, or do you put a little bit of that on the quarterback who's not making the throws? I don't know. We'll look at it when I do my film breakdown, but I will say that I don't think that the head coach went away from what he was trying to do throughout the whole game. He didn't go away from it until it was 19-0, and he didn't have a choice to do anything else, because at that point you're down by 2 scores with 6 minutes to go or something like that.
Yeah, right. When they're down 19-10. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, it is fair to, if someone hears that and says, well, yeah, I'm not putting entirely on Trey either. No. And we just went through that. There is blame for the offensive line. There is blame for a couple of drops throughout. There is the acknowledgement that you have to acknowledge the weather. I saw a comment earlier that was like 2 juxtaposing positions. It was like, you can't blame the weather for this. You knew when it was a game like that, it was going to be close scoring. It's like, wait a minute. Those are opposing statements right there. Like, if the weather affected the game and made it close scoring, then the weather affected the game. So, yeah, I'm not putting the blame on Kyle Shanahan. I am not tolerating fans that after one game are going to the back to the fire Kyle Shanahan nonsense. Man, just go back and rewatch last season and how he dragged this team out of irrelevancy back to the NFC Championship game. You're going to tell me you don't want that guy coaching your frickin' squad? It's crazy to me.
Yeah. And then there's the super chat here from Rich, and Brandon, you had a comment right above his. which I'm not going to put up just because it has a word in there that I don't like to use on the show. But, again, that's the play calling piece. But Rich puts up, thank you for the super chat. Rich, you say, Kyle, the play caller wasn't as big an issue as Kyle, the head coach, and disciplined all around. I know it's week 1, but this was terrible. Rich, I will give you a high five because I agree with you on that to an extent. I don't think that it was Kyle Shanahan, the play caller, that was the problem here. If you want to pin something on him, it's the undisciplined play of his team. It's undisciplined goes to the penalties. It goes to the fumble by Samuel. It goes to some of the bad throws that Trey Lance made. It goes to the interception that Trey Lance threw. It bleeds through a lot of different things. But I don't think when you look at Kyle Shanahan in this game, you don't say it was because it's not Kyle Shanahan, the offensive coordinator. You got to separate those two.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when people are ripping Kyle Shanahan, they're ripping the play calling. The play calling, I don't think was the problem. The play calling here, what the issue was when it comes to Kyle Shanahan was separate of that, and it was the undisciplined portion of it.
And it's fair to wonder if there's an adjustment period for Kyle Shanahan losing his right-hand man in Mike McDaniel, and therefore maybe needing to put more of himself into the play caller side of what he does and having less focus there as the head coach. I did hope that having Anthony Lynn in the building would be a stabilizing factor for Kyle Shanahan. Again, one game, too small of a sample size to make any definitive statements about this one. That's what's so fun about the NFL. We overreact no matter what. Walking out of that stadium, listening to the Bears fans, you would think they're headed to the Super Bowl in what they were saying to us Niner faithful as we walked out of that stadium. So I'm not putting it all on Kyle Shanahan either.
No, and I think, I put an article together kind of just wrapping up, the whole thing, right? Because Overreaction Monday, that was the title of the show, and I think we should probably call it this for the rest of the season. It's this Overreaction Monday. We get to come in here, we can overreact, and we can take what the overreactions were, and we can discuss them. And if we want to overreact, we can do that too. Did the 49ers lose because Trey Lance played poorly? No. Did the 49ers lose just because Deebo Samuel fumbled the ball? No. Did the 49ers lose because the defense didn't play very well in the second half? No. Did the 49ers lose just because of Kyle Shanahan? No. This loss was a total team effort. Trey Lance had a part in it. Deebo Samuel had a part in it. Mike McGlinchey and the offensive line had a part in it. The defense had a part in it. And the head coach had a part in it. And so I think that's the main takeaway that I want to make sure that people understand where I'm coming from with it. I've had a lot of people on Twitter getting after me because I said the offense missed opportunities, and people are thinking they take the miss that I say the offense missed opportunities, and it's like only Trey Lance, but
right.
It's not. And I'm not going to sit there and I'm not going to make it easy. I'm not going to have. I don't feel like I should have to. I'm pretty straightforward. Where most of the time, if I'm going to say that Trey Lance stunk, I'm going to say that Trey Lance stunk. If I thought Deebo Samuel screwed up, I'm going to say that Deebo Samuel screwed up. It's pretty easy if you follow me and you really pay attention to it. Most of the time, 99% of the time, I am very just to the direct and to the point because that's the way that I am in most cases, which I think, is why a guy like USMC 49er constantly is telling me that I'm too hard on Trey Lance. I'm sorry. Trey Lance is the 49er starting quarterback. They used 3 first-round picks on him. He played okay yesterday. He was a part of the reason why they lost. The fact that I can tell you when his game went downhill, I'm sorry if you don't like it. If you don't like it, go follow somebody that is going to tell you that Trey Lance played fine yesterday and that he wasn't the reason at all, and he's going to build his whole platform on Trey Lance. Stop following me if you want me to tell you that Trey Lance is the next great quarterback, because I don't know. I don't know. Nobody knows what Trey Lance is going to be. What we know is that Trey Lance yesterday was 9 of 18 when the rain started blowing up in the fourth quarter. He was 9 of 18 for 133 yards and a pick at that point. Make of that what you will. If you feel like 9 of 18 in the rain was good, fine. I don't think it was all that bad. Like I've said, I felt like he made some good plays. He made some bad plays. Trey Lance in that game yesterday was what Trey Lance has been since he joined the 49ers. He makes some really good plays. He makes some bad plays. Eventually, he might put it together. If he doesn't, Kyle Shanahan won't be here.
Fair point. I like how you can say, man, I don't think Trey had that bad of a game. He made some mistakes, and someone will hear that and be like, how can you be so hard on Trey Lance? It is funny to me. I get it. I mean, people are very emotional about this one. There's no question about that. But I think you do have to call it as you see it, because we expected ups and downs, and these are some downs right here. Did he flash some great things? Yes, but I feel like you acknowledge those as well. So personally, Jack, when I listen to the entirety of it and not just snippets, I hear a balanced take. I mean, look at this was a team loss. Tabor Pepper had a penalty yesterday. Tabor Pepper is involved in the penalties. So, yeah, there's plenty of blame to go around.
Yeah, Tabor Pepper. That was one where, the ball would have been like at the 2-yard line. Instead, it was at the 9. I mean, I know the defense did fine, but, I think that was what happened on that one. I think that was the Pepper play. That was the penalty. I think it was that one. I don't know, man. There was so much that went on in that game. Was he called for a holding?
For Tabor, he was called for down. He was downfield, getting downfield prior to illegal man downfield.
Gotcha. Okay. There was a separate illegal man downfield one. That's right. I do remember that. That was when I think they were kicking to the.
That was when they downed the punt at the 3. It really only cost them 5 yards, just like the penalty. Tavarius Moore caught it at the 3. Mitch was on fire, and then Mitch kicked it to Dante Pettis at the 8, and then Dante ran backwards and got tackled at the 6. So it really, I think it worked out. But yeah, Tabor Pepper found his name in the highlight reel, not in the positive way.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, no, it was, again, it was a bad start for the 49ers. They are 0-1 for the 4th time in 6 years under Kyle Shanahan. Just to kind of wrap up the show with a really nice, some good bit of news for everybody. In the 4 years that they've lost their season opener under Kyle Shanahan, they've gone on to a losing record. In the 2 seasons that they won their season opener, they went to the Super Bowl or the NFC Championship game. So we kind of know where it is. One other thing, I know that we all want them to go to the Super Bowl and win it. The 49ers have been to the Super Bowl 7 times. How many times have they lost the season opener and made it to the Super Bowl? Once. 1981. They lost to the Lions in Detroit. That was the only time that they went from losing week 1 to the Super Bowl. Hey, maybe they're going to come back and do it. Like they say all that, like Jim Carrey's character in Dumb and Dumber says. So you're saying there's a chance. And that's about where we are right now with the 49ers.
So true. So true. There's absolutely a chance. Hey, this team could turn it around. Green Bay dropped their season opener last year. I believe they ended up as the number 1 seed. It didn't work out so well for them in the end, but we did that in the end. And hey, they made it after dropping the season opener. It can be done.
Absolutely. The 49ers were 3-5 at one point last year, and they made it all the way to the NFC Championship game. I don't know I don't know this number, but I think if you go back and you look at the guys who were second year quarterbacks in the NFL, but they were in their first full season as starters, I don't think there's very many of those guys who were in their second year in the NFL, but they were first year starters who took their team to the Super Bowl.
Right.
Roethlisberger comes to mind right away because he was dynamite his rookie season, got him the NFC Championship game. I think they got to the Super Bowl the next year.
They did.
But I don't think it's, but that's different than what Lance did because Lance only played twice in 2 starts. So it's an interesting piece, and we'll see. We're going to see how it plays out. I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer. I'm just giving you guys. I've
not changed my opinion on who this 49ers team is at all. I still believe that they are one of the most talented rosters in the league. I still believe that this defense has a chance to be one of the most special in the league. And I do believe we will go as far as Trey Lance is able to mature throughout. And I would expect some ups and downs. I was not expecting the down to start week 1. I thought that was going to be an up, but it still fits within what I know of Trey Lance and the pattern I was expecting this season.
Yeah. I think it's all part of the process. And Rick Diaz, he wanted me to put this up. He said, "Hey, Jack and Rob, can you read the comment what I'm going to say before this game started? I said protect the ball and no penalties. They didn't do that." Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's part of high level NFL football is that you need to not turn the ball over in penalties. You go back through Shanahan's time. You go back to last season when the 49ers turned the ball over more than their opponents. That was when they were 3-5 in the second half of the season. I don't think they had a win where they turned the ball over more than the opponents. They were okay when it was push or they were better. But I think the only times that they lost in the second half of the season even was when they turned the ball over more than their opponents. So it just doesn't work out when you turn the ball over more. Add that to the fact that you don't score points because of an overthrow, and you have obviously, and a miss, and so just all this stuff just kind of all plays together. You just can't do it.
Can't do it. Now that Rick has admitted his prediction, he's being blamed for the loss. I mean, if we needed someone to blame, the jinx was made.
Well, I think we should do that from now. So what we'll do, Rick, we're gonna make you the honorary scapegoat. So from now on, every time the 49ers lose, we're gonna say that we blame Rick Diaz for this 49ers loss because he said before the game that the 49ers need to protect the ball and there's gonna be no penalties. They didn't do it. And it's all because Rick brought it up and he threw it into the universe that the 49ers lost the game. It's all your fault, Rick.
Damn. That's rough. That's rough,
yeah.
Rick.
Yeah, you're gonna have to wear it. I'm sorry, you gotta wear it until next Sunday when the 49ers take on the Seahawks. The other, another one last point. It's a good and bad point, right? I know Seattle, I heard Seattle's up 7-0 right now. But if Seattle loses tonight, the 49ers, every team in the NFC West will have lost, and the 49ers will be right there. It's a reset of the season. Everybody's going to be 1-1 in the NFC West. So we got to hope that the 49ers need to hope that the Seahawks lose it up there to the Broncos, and we'll see how that goes. They also, go ahead.
And even if they don't, we play them next week. So even if they end up 1-0, all we got to do is go clean their clocks, and we will then springboard right ahead of them.
There you go. And then he's right, next week. And then, like Brandon says, damn you, Rick. Damn, put that out there. Damn. I think we started a trend, Rob.
Yes, we did. And I saw a message from Rick. He was like, hey, it's getting late. I got to bounce. So he felt the heat coming and was like, I got to bail on this thing.
Right. We started picking on him. All of a sudden, sorry. Started probably, he knows how I feel when I got USMC 49er complaining about my Trey Lance, discussion because I'm hurting Trey Lance's feelings. I don't know. Trey Lance played fine, and
yes.
That's the end of it. At the end of the day, Trey Lance wasn't the reason they lost. Like I said, we said, I'm just going to wrap it up by putting a little bow on it. Wasn't Trey Lance's fault. Wasn't Deebo Samuel's fault. Wasn't the defense's fault. It wasn't on Kyle Shanahan. It was a 49ers team loss against Chicago. 49ers, the good part about all this is that the 49ers have a game coming up on Sunday at Levi's. Not going to be any rain. Not going to have that as an excuse. The one excuse is they're not going to have their running back Elijah Mitchell. We'll see if George Kittle's around. But that's one of the good parts about the NFL. This thing's kicked off, and this machine doesn't stop for the next 17 weeks.
I can't wait to wipe this game off the books with a big win against Seattle.
There you go. And that's all they got to do. Go out there, take care of Seattle, move to 1-1. Maybe pull off an upset here, and they get to that 4-2 or whatever better mark in the first 6 weeks. We'll see. A lot of football left to go. We'll see how this whole thing plays out. Rob, what's coming up on your channel?
I will be on tomorrow with my 49ers mailbag. If you've got your questions about the performance in Chicago, about what I ate for dinner, about whatever you may want to know, send in an email to 49ersmailbag@gmail.com or follow me on Twitter. The handle there is @theleftshoe, SCHUH. I put out a little question in the morning asking for those mailbag submissions, mailbags at 5 p.m. on my channel tomorrow.
Absolutely. If you guys are following me right now and you're on this show and you like what you're seeing, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, but then also make sure you get over to Rob's channel. It's in the description below. It's pretty easy. Just go to YouTube and search at Rob Shoe, and it's going to pop up. He's on Twitter @theleftshoe if you want to check him out over there as well. So make sure you're following Rob. I know, Rob, I got to tell you, you had 14,000 video views on your post-game video. I got to figure out what you're doing because I was at like 1,400. So
man,
you're kicking my tail. That was pretty dang impressive. That's all I got to say. If you're not following Rob, you're missing out. There's a lot of people that are checking him out. So go do it. But before you leave, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button here for Jackie Boy so that I can keep going to the games like I did this week to Chicago, and then also get yourselves over to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. If you haven't checked out the article that I put up this morning, you're missing out because the people over there have been really happy about what that one was, and I had a lot of fun writing it too. So go check it out, everybody. Until then, Rob, I'll see you Friday. Everybody else, have a great rest of your Monday, and get ready for I'm going to be doing a film review. If you guys want to be around in about 15 minutes, I'm going to do my 49ers film review. I'm going to get it done today. so that I can post it later. I'll have it ready to go, but it's going to be ready. It's going to be running. So, all right, guys, take care. Like, subscribe, get to the channel, check out Rob's as well. Take care, everybody. Talk to you soon.
Cheers.
Faithful.